as a way to get back to sources, or at least to search that. What do you think about that?
Let me take a different tack for a moment. The primary problem in the history of classic philosophy, primary problem, breaks into two, Aristotelian and Platonic. But the primary vision of Platonic philosophy, which is really Hellenic philosophy, is in this word understanding. When understanding is directed at the phenomenal, right? By the phenomenal, I mean the everyday world trying to master the appearances. Then the mind, therefore, has to develop to match this challenge. Then you have to learn how to think and calculate and categorize and to match this pursuit. In the Platonic philosophical world, this is said to be the misuse of understanding, that you have to turn it and try to understand ultimate concerns. And it's in that shift, there has to be a total shift of the understanding, behind which, if there's the energy to sustain it, then that can produce a different kind of clarity of mind, where there's the opportunity for nous, as they call it, because it's not reason. See, we use the word reason, and what we often mean is logical, sequential thinking. But reason in the Greek world is not logical, sequential thinking. That's called heuristic reasoning. Heuristic reasoning.
Is linear reasoning?
Yeah. And when they use the word reason, what that means, right, rational, is often this word, nous, in Greek, right? And when understanding then is continually reflecting on the nature of the ultimate, a clarity emerges that then allows the mind then to function through nous, what they call reason. We don't call it reason. And that is the very condition for the exercise of intuition. So therefore you see metaphysics in the Greek world, not Aristotle, Platonic world, is shifting understanding so you get out of this heuristic logical, what they also call chop logic, right? Or arguing to win, or just sustaining logical arguments, but to try to use the mind to grasp the eternal, the fundamental reality of things. That effort clarifies, that clarification opens up access to nous or mind, so it then functions as insight into the nature of ultimate reality. That's the whole Platonic vision.
And that's what Socrates would be arguing against the sophists when he was suggesting it.
No.
And that would be the more noumenal world?
That is the noumenal world. No.
Would you say that that would be the arete of the philosopher then?
That's the arete, excellence. That's the particular arete of the philosopher. That's right. No. That is excellence. That's what he's doing in the Meno, that's what he's doing in the Republic, that's what he's doing in the Symposium, and that's what Proclus is doing, that's what Plotinus is doing, that's what Simplicus is doing, that's what...
How could, getting back to the scholasticism, how could there be a generalized theory or belief that was basically Aristotelian input to Albertus Magnus and Thomas Aquinas, as opposed to what you said, confusing with Proclus's writings as well?
Well,
I never heard that before. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I didn't know.
No, I could direct you to literature so you can check yourself. See, we don't have a philosophical history of Europe. We don't have a philosophical history yet because of a variety of factors. Some scholars can put it together, but there really isn't one. Here, let me put a couple of things for you.
Wouldn't it have been so obvious? I mean, Aristotelian versus Platonic thought, in a lot of respects, is so, diametrically opposed. It would seem fairly obvious if there were that kind of muddying of the waters. Again, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just it's not that. It's nothing that you need to be familiar. You need to be familiarized with a couple of things. One is that Proclus did this monumental work. Right? Proclus did this monumental work.
Right? It is so clear and beautiful and precise, and it's the highest degree rational, that this is 470. They saw the end of the classical world coming. They saw Christianity destroying all of the old institutions, everything else. And therefore, Emperor Justinian passed an edict which closed the schools of Athens. The philosophers then were in exile to Syria. Now, when they did that, that's 530.
To Syria?
530 AD, right. In Syria, they discovered, or the first recording, I should say, the first recording of the writings of Dionysius, now called Pseudo-Dionysius. The writings of Dionysius were then discovered, and he's the one who had the 10 letters, where in one of his letters he says that he was present at the crucifixion of Jesus. So therefore all of his writings were accepted as canonical. More than that, his thought is so pure that it was argued for many years that that writing, the writings of Saint Dionysius, were more significant in many ways than Holy Scripture. Therefore, his writings then, when St. Thomas Aquinas read them, he saw them as wondrous, and he included in his own Summa Theologica 1,700 quotations or references to this one writer, Pseudo-Dionysius. Well, okay. Subsequently in history, in the 15th century, a scholar by the name of Valla looked at this and he said it's a forgery. It could not have been written at the time of Jesus. It was likely, and the first date it was mentioned in history is 532 in Syria. The philosophers were exiled into Syria. Proclus was the head of Plato's academy. His successor had to flee to Syria. These writings were found for the first time, or discovered, found, or identified in 532. No reference to them before, i.e., some Platonist sitting in the corner whipped up the works called Pseudo-Dionysius and passed them off as a forgery. They brought together in a magnificent way, in a condensed, fantastically condensed form, Neoplatonic thought. That entered into Europe as if it were Christian. St. Thomas Aquinas thought it was real. All right, now, see, Aristotle's works weren't in Europe. They came in through Islam, through Islamic Spain. And they were heavily colored by commentaries by Neoplatonists. And therefore, Europe was in a state of very interesting period, because therefore St. Thomas Aquinas could use an Aristotle, which really wasn't Aristotle, it was a Neoplatonic influenced Aristotle, a pagan, a forgery, and the Bible to create his primary Summa Theologica. Well, what do you think the impact of this was when it was discovered to be a forgery? It wasn't until 1895 that the Catholic Church agreed that Dionysius' writings were a forgery. And there's still some who don't want to accept it because the writings play such a major role in the culture. Okay, what does that mean? You see, that means then that when Plato and all of the classic works came into Europe for the first time, that wasn't until the 1500s, because they came from Constantinople. That's right. Ficino's Academy then translated them, and now they had a problem. How do you reconcile the new Aristotle coming in Latin with what St. Thomas Aquinas used as Latin sources? A worse problem came. Since this was regarded as genuine, they had a belief from the 2nd century, which was accepted by all of the major Catholic thinkers, called the parallel tradition.